Kia ora. Good evening. Welcome to Connecting the Dots podcast. So, tonight I want to talk about something that again dropped in my lap. As you know, I keep saying I'm an intuitive podcaster. I just go about minding my own business, just doing research, waiting for things to be presented to me. When I read the signs and codes of the universe, I know I'm being told this is what I need to talk about next. And this one's a doozy. So in one of the videos I was watching, they were talking about, unexplained mysteries of, like the archaeological kind and blah, blah. I'll put a link in the description box below. I'll always put a link in the description box below of the video channel that inspired the podcast. And they were talking about the medicine wheel of Wyoming, and I've had to sit with it for a bit because I had to decipher the codes. It's taken me a while to decipher the codes to be able to tell you what this medicine wheel is, and then it's like it's like I opened up a whole binary system for the universe when I did it. And it's like one thing's just lead to another, lead to another, lead to another, and it's blowing my mind. So I've written my notes down. I may have to stop and pause to read my notes because it is quite late here now. But this is going to blow your minds. If you're Indigenous, all my videos, all my Instagram, like everything's just going to make sense. And it's going to blow your mind because like it all, the dots have been connected. So, okay, so the medicine wheel. The medicine wheel of Wyoming is found in the Bighorn National Forest. Basically, it's like a circle made up of 28 sort of like circles and these cairns, rock formations made of limestone. And the Crow leader apparently had visions of stars descending on tobacco blossoms where he fasted and prayed. The Crow people state that it was there before they got there and it was built by the ancient ancestors. It's covered in snow more often than it's not. It's not very easy to see because of the fact that it's always covered in snow most of the year. Tom Yellowtail, who is also Crow, tells the story of Burnt Face, who got help from the little people to help heal his face. So basically what happened was Burnt Face, he had some sort of accident and he felt ashamed and, put himself into exile. And he went up to Big Wheel Mountain or Medicine Mountain and Medicine Wheel Mountain, sorry. It's because I'm getting so many different names for it because like once I connected to the ancestors, they call it, some of them call it Big Wheel Mountain, some of them call it Medicine Mountain. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. So he went up to the Medicine Mountain, he went up to the medicine wheel, and apparently he sat and prayed and fasted and went on like a spiritual journey to connect to the ancestors. And when he came back down from the mountain, he said that the little people came and healed his face. And when he came down, he built the Fort Smith wheel, which is similar in every kind of way to the Bighorn medicine wheel. Now, it is said that the medicine wheel is representative of the summer solstices, the equinox, the equinoxes, the moon, lunar and solar eclipses, and orbital cycles. And I found it interesting that it's on Bighorn Forest Mountain, because of the fact of what I'm about to say next in regards to the constellation Taurus. The wheel mirrors the north ecliptic polar region, which is why, with the winters and everything. And they found Kean pairs corresponding with Sirius, Aldebaran, and Rigel. Now, this is important because when I looked at the medicine wheel, I immediately knew what it was. And it's basically the constellation of Orion and Eridanus. If you look at my podcast that I did about the Dendera lights, and the notes that I've left in my little community thing, or you go to my LinkedIn and Twitter, but if you read my YouTube notes that I put in the community section, I figured out that in the Dendera light, the snake that's in the middle of the Dendera light is Eridanus, the constellation of Eridanus. And I've explained it all in there. I won't go into detail about Eridanus because it is in my community section box and on my Twitter and that. But if you have a look at the wheel, you'll see that they've done a path that looks like Eridanus going up to the wheel. And I thought, that's Orion. They're talking about Orion and Orion's belt. Where it's built, where it's been built, that's Orion and Orion's belt. It's the constellation of Orion. Orion is the most visible stellar pattern in the north sky, and Orion's belt aligns perfectly with the Giza pyramids and the Mayan temples that they found. This is important because, we're talking about the Dendera light, and Eridanus being, the thing in the middle of the Dendera light, because I've been saying that the Dendera light is they were using it for healing people. It's like it was a medicinal tool. Like they used energy. They used they used the concept of hydroelectric therapy and biorhythmics in order to heal people and change the vibration, change the frequency of the area, and to unify the north and the south, and bring people together and heal illnesses and plagued minds, and to help fertilize crops and all that sort of thing. Because as you know, with me building the biorhythmic field generator, this is basically everything that I'm doing. I'm using earth, I'm not using water, but it is the exact same concept. It's all the same. I've just taken it one step further because I have better access to things now because I live in a modern age, whereas my ancestors had to rely on things like the Nile River and the mines that they had access to, so Orion marks the sun at its lowest point and is used as an ancient timekeeper. So Orion was used as a clock, which is, if you look at the design of the medicine wheel, it does look like a clock, with the times and seconds and minutes and blah, blah, blah. It does look like a clock, and this is important. This is all, everything is all going to fall into place, I promise. It might feel like I'm going off in different directions, but I promise this is all going to come together after I finish reading all this out. Now, in Mexico, they found 2 large pyramids and a temple that point directly to Orion's belt that was built in the 2nd century BC that align perfectly with the pyramids of Giza. The Egyptians believed that Orion is Osiris. Sorry, my writing, and it is dark and I haven't got my glasses on. The Egyptians believed that Orion is Osiris, the god of rebirth and afterlife, and when the belt is visible around the winter solstice, it means they know that the floods of the Nile were coming to an end. The Giza pyramids line up to Orion's belt. So the Giza pyramids line up, the temples that they found in Mexico line up, the Mayans just had like this obsession with the pyramids and with the Egyptians and Orion's belt. But as I have been trying to tell people, that Māori people are descended from Egyptians, and Māori people migrated, and some of us went off and became Mesoamericans, some of us became like Siberian, some of us became Asian, some of us became Polynesian. So but we all had that original start point of Egypt. We all sort of migrated around that way, originating from Egypt. They did DNA testing. My mum sent me the article about a year before she died. Absolutely blew my mind. And apparently they did testing and they found that Māori people originated from Egypt, and we got kicked out of Egypt for being naughty. And we went to Hawaii, we went to New Zealand, we went all through Polynesia and through Central and South America, and then of course they migrated up and became like the Mesoamericans and Native Americans, and so on and so forth. The Siberian ones came up through Siberia, down through Russia and Alaska, and but we all kind of just spread out far and wide. The Mayans, like the Egyptians, believed life was created by the gods from Orion's belt. Both the pyramids align with Orion's belt. Orion was surrounded by Lepus, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Lepus the rabbit and Taurus the bull, for him to go hunting, because Orion is the hunter, and Native Americans, and that they wear the medicine wheelers. They call it bighorn because of the buffalo, but also that they believe that Orion's belt was, they called it the buffalo spine, I believe. So to the Yakut Native Americans, Orion's belt was the footprint of the flea people. To the Navajo, it's the marker that it's time to plant the crops. Now, the Yakut Native Americans believed that that Orion's belt was the footprint to the flea people. And remember, Burnt Face said that he was healed by the little people. So these ancient petroglyphs left by the southwestern indigenous people who did drawings of the star people or sky people. Now, remember in my podcast about the ancient Chinese alien wars, they also talked about the star people. The star people or the sky people are the Egyptians, because most indigenous cultures around the world, most ancient cultures, most first blood cultures recognize that Egyptians are, when it comes to the stars and the code that we see in the stars and the connection that we have with the gods and the stars and the constellations and the binary codes that we are able to turn into language and invention and creation and development and cultivation, and that, like, it's the Egyptians. They, the Greeks and the Romans and all that, obviously, and the Chinese, between the Egyptians and the Chinese being the two oldest civilizations, really, there's so many cultures that have absolutely, built who we are today. But everything kind of started with the Egyptians, and it's because, like, we understood how to talk to the universe. We understood the laws of the universe. I talk about this over and over and over again. I got called crazy for this stuff. I got locked up for this stuff. I got medicated for this stuff. This is why I've been fighting for Indigenous rights, because I'm a victim of a race hate crime based on everything that I'm about to talk about and have talked about in this podcast and previous podcasts and on social media about Indigenous rights and how we are treated like fifth class citizens because of our beliefs and our religion and our faith and our connection to the gods and ancestors. But we did a lot. Like my people, our people did a lot for the human race, and we need to be respected for that, and we're not. We've been medicated and we've been made homeless and we've been killed for our organs and we've been imprisoned and given addictions and prescriptions and alcohol and kicked out onto the street and made homeless and that, and told to sit down and shut up. And I'm not doing it because I was put here to do something about it. That's why I was given the mind to be able to read these hidden codes so I could then put these messages out to my Indigenous brothers and sisters around the world and say, bloody wake up, because it's disturbing to me that something like this medicine wheel in Wyoming is a big mystery and nobody knows what it's for. And then I come along and I look at it and I read the codes and symbols and signs and I go, oh, this is what it is. And it points to this message and that message and blah, blah, blah. Because what I have been trying to tell people for the last few years of, the Indigenous cultures is that because we have allowed ourselves to get trapped in the matrix of the colonizations and the modern world, we have forgotten the language of our people, of our star people, of our ancestors, of our ancient ancestors, and they are screaming at us to listen to them, because we are the last, we are the guardians of this earth. We are the navigators of the stars. We are the people of the stars. We are the ancient bloodlines whose gods and ancestors came from the stars, who spoke a language nobody else on earth can speak. And it's all been forgotten. The fact that there are spiritualists and new age practitioners and Wiccans and hippy dippy doodahs going to our ancient cultural ritual sites and then just having their way with them to suit whatever spiritual bollocks that they need to be met in order to feel good that they're connecting with the earth and that. Like, how are we letting these people rape our culture and rape our heritage for to make them feel better or to make money off it and have these big stupid festivals around these ancient markings that are so important to civilization? It's unacceptable. Indigenous lives matter. We matter the most because we are the ones who carry a forgotten language within our DNA that is dying out so fast because everyone has just stopped caring. And it's unacceptable. So here I am, this little white-skinned black girl from the Polynesian islands who was given a brain that knows how to read these codes because it was taught to me by my ancestors and it was never lost in me. And I've come along and I've had to walk through friggin' hellfire and brimstone to get these messages out there to say to people, wake up. Because if it dies with me, it's gone forever. And then nobody's going to know what these little messages and clues are that our ancestors have been leaving throughout history, aside from solving murders and all that sort of thing. Like, I'm connecting the dots to throw out a line to people to say, grab onto the line and pull yourself in and remember who you are and start relearning that language. Like, Māori people and First Nations people, and that what you're doing isn't enough because of the fact that you don't know what your own markings mean. And even scientists aren't able to figure it out. And if you can't tell scientists what these markings mean, and the scientists can't figure it out and don't have a blimmin' clue, then when I'm dead, who learns the truth? And I've got 2 sons, and I'm trying desperately to teach my sons, but they're at that age where they're just like, oh, you know. So if it dies with me, it dies forever. And it's important. And I'm going to tell you why. So, the ancient petroglyphs that were left by the southwestern indigenous people, they did the drawings of the star people or the sky people. And they believed that they came to Earth bearing gifts of cultural establishment, knowledge, wisdom, living in harmony with the universal laws. And I talk constantly about abiding by the laws of the universe. I got locked up for this stuff, and yet it's written all over petroglyphs and hieroglyphs and all that, all over ancient walls. And because I came along and said, oh, well, this is what this is saying and that's what that's saying, they said, no, you're nuts, and forced me to take medication. My ex-husband couldn't stand the fact that I knew so much more than him, that he decided I was better off dead. He didn't want me getting these messages out because he doesn't want me saving indigenous cultures. He doesn't want me saving my heritage. He wants my heritage dead. Because he would rather me be dead and have my name smeared across people's dirty, filthy mouths by bad-mouthing me as a mother because of everything I'm trying to teach my children, by bad-mouthing my work and ensuring that nobody took me seriously, so that, you know, should I survive what he was attempting to do, nobody would take my work seriously. And then this medicine wheel has come along and has just laid it all out there, and it's like, now I finally realise what it's all been about. And I'm bringing this message to you, my Indigenous brothers and sisters all around the world, because now is the time and something has to be done. He was unsuccessful. Him and his cult, my former students, and this is going to matter talking about my former students in a minute, they failed in their attempts to finish me and take my life, and it only made me more powerful, it only made me more protected, and it only made me more strong and determined to get the message out there, especially now doing this podcast, because what I discovered, it's just blowing my mind. So, okay, so that the medicine wheel, think of it as a clock that they believe was, which is connected to the constellation of Orion and Orion's belt and Orion's nebula and all of Orion. You know, the hunter king, the hunter god, and that the medicine wheel is a clock. And because it is, it is the ancient timekeeper. And what am I? I'm a gatekeeper and I'm a time jumper. And my ancestors gave me the ability to be able to time jump. And because my chief totem is dragon, and dragons rule that ancestry and time, you know. So this is huge messages for me, massive codes. So because they believed that they were bearing gifts of ancient culture, of cultural establishment, knowledge, wisdom, living in harmony with universal law, they brought messages and teachings of consciousness and navigation through the realms of time and space. And these are on these petroglyphs. They considered these star beings supreme beings. So they considered basically our Egyptian ancestors supreme beings because of the knowledge that we had on universal law, and to be able to travel through time and space, which is what I can do. So because I can do it, and, you know, our ancient ancestors put them on the walls centuries ago, apparently that's a mental illness. So do you see why it's a race hate crime? Do you see why this lawsuit has to go ahead? Because how I was treated was a race hate crime, because they said that I must be mental to think that I knew all of this stuff. even though it's been written on walls throughout our ancestry, throughout history for centuries. And because I was able to decipher the code and say, yeah, no, I completely understand that, and here's the evidence, they didn't look at the evidence. Because that night when my ex-husband did what he did, I got that download to lock the doors and protect myself because my life was in danger. Well, that was me, accessing time and memory, and I've put enough evidence up there now to prove that I was telling the truth, but apparently that wasn't good enough because I'm a white-skinned black girl. That must be a mental illness. So it's, the way I was treated through all of this was a human rights violation and a race hate crime. And now everything is coming together. So when I take all of this stuff to court, I'm going to make them eat their medical degrees. Because how I was treated, how my people and my ancestors and my science was treated was nothing short of illegal. And I will not stop until I get justice and freedom and my name is cleared and my sons and I are given enough compensation to be able to move to Canada and start our lives there and open our store and open our businesses and do our radio shows and do our shows and put more of it out there. And when I can get around, to North and Central and South America, when it's safe to go to these places, I will be able to further bring the message of our people to, my Indigenous brothers and sisters. Because it needs to be heard. This needs to be heard because we're forgetting it. We shouldn't be relying on scientists to tell us what our ancestors have been trying to tell us for centuries. And that is, they have been able to talk to each other. And they have been leaving messages for me to read so that I can tell them to you and say, this is what they are trying to say. Because these petroglyphs that they are finding on the walls of Central and South and North America and in Egypt and Africa and, in Europe and all that, they have been leaving messages to each other. They have been talking back and forth to each other for centuries about what is happening right now, which is that us Indigenous people, we need to come together. If they could all talk to each other in different continents and different time spaces because of the language that they were able to read, decoding the messages from the sky because of the technology and the capability and the wisdom that my ancestors, my Egyptian ancestors, brought us all. If they were able to do all that, we shouldn't be relying on scientists and archaeologists and historians and that to try and figure it out for us. We should all be like me. I should be the rule, not the exception. But I'm the only one. There's just me. And I've had so many people try and make attempts on my life over the last couple of years. It's not funny. So I need to get this stuff out because quite honestly, who's going to try and attempt to take me down next? I know, I can tell you now, my ex-husband has considered it again to try it again. I know that for a fact. So, I've had a lot of people conspire to try and shut me up and shut me down and finish me so that I can't do this work, so that I can't put this out there. Because ultimately what I want to do is get to Canada and open my store and use all the money that I make to build a children's home to protect who? Indigenous children and unaccompanied border children who are, natives to their country, because I'm trying to save the lives of brown-skinned children. That was worthy of death, apparently. And, ridicule and, unfair diagnosis and injustices of the law. Judges and lawyers and doctors and that completely turning their back on the law because they didn't want to be wrong and saying, oh gosh, maybe we got it right, maybe we got it wrong with her. Maybe we don't know what we're talking about. Maybe when it comes to Indigenous things, we should keep our mouths shut. But no, they just didn't want to be wrong. So it was better to lock me up and keep me away from lawyers and take my phone off me so I had no contact with the outside world, where I was given no food. I was starved for up to 5 days without food, with my belly button split open from the constant vomiting, where I was begging for medical treatment and not getting it for 3 months, where my scars were pussy and split open, and I had to take salt packets in order to from the cafeteria in order to keep my wounds clean, because apparently indigeny is a mental illness. And yet, if it wasn't for this mental Indigenous immigrant from New Zealand, I wouldn't be here deciphering all these codes for these so-called educated scientists, historians, and archaeologists, and you know. So where's the justice? Because I'm not going to stop until I get my justice. And this is important because, like, this is happening to all of us. I am the it's happening to all of us. I'm the rule for that as well. And it has to stop, because what our ancestors have been trying to tell us is so important, because we are the messengers of the future, and that's what Orion is. Orion is the constellation for the past, present, and future. And our ancestors have been trying to tell us what we need to be doing and how we need to be unified and coming together and passing on our knowledge and our wisdom to future generations, so that we're not having to rely on scientists and historians and archaeologists and that to decipher the codes of our own people. So hang on. In Mesa Verde, I hope I pronounced that right, in Colorado, across from the Cliff Palace is a sun temple. It's aligned to the north, south, east, west cardinal directions, and it's in the pattern of the golden ratio found in nature. They are they have a striking comparison to the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Like, when you look at them, they have a striking comparison to the Great Pyramids of Egypt. So everything is pointing to the pyramids of Egypt. Everything is talking about the worship or the respect that is given to the ancient ancestors of Egypt, who have been passing on this knowledge through the language of the stars and the navigation of the stars. As we migrated, that has been passed down, and there's been these little things set up, like these medicine wheels and these petroglyphs and that have all been put in place to remind us as we go what happened, what has been said, who taught us and how, who taught us and why, and what needs to be done, and what we can do with what we were taught. So there's 28 spokes in the wheel. The Orion Nebula contains the trapezium cluster due to the asterism of its primary four stars, so north, south, east, west, because remember, north, south, east, west. The temple is aligned to the north, south, east, west, and Orion's nebula its asterism is primary to the north, south, east, west. The trapezium cluster is a component of the Orion Nebula made up of 2,800 stars, so 28. 28 spokes in the wheel, 2,800 stars. So each spoke represents 1,000 stars. It's south of the Orion's belt in the Orion constellation. Orion itself, in spiritual terms, is considered to be the constellation for good news, abundance, rebirth, and immortality. Now, remember, Burnt Face went to the medicine wheel to heal and connect to his ancestors in that, in order to heal. It is also the symbolism for strength and beauty and imperfection, or as the French call it, jololade. So he went there with his burnt face and he came back healed. And that medicine wheel, which I believe is representative of Orion and Eridanus, I think he went there in order to heal. I mean, because obviously it's called a medicine wheel, but I think that he went there to heal, because it is basically a Native American version of a biorhythmic field generator. It is made of limestone, just like the pyramids, and I keep saying the pyramids, that's what the pyramids are for, and the dendrolite found in the Temple of Hathor, and I think what it is that they have taken what their ancient Egyptian ancestors or the staff people taught them about biorhythmic engineering, for the purposes of medicinal healing and bringing people together, because Orion's belt, is also the symbol for infinity. It's the infinity symbol. And it's also the symbol for wisdom and spiritual awakening, which is what, when he was there and he got healed, he had the spiritual awakening. And so I think that he went there to heal, to have his awakening, because maybe he was like preparing to die, or he thought he was going to die. But because of everything that Orion is symbolic of, he had his rebirth, he had an awakening, he had his epiphany, he had his rebirth, he built his own wheel, the Fort Smith wheel. And because it healed him and everything, he honoured the gods by building that wheel, because he realised that because he knew that the medicine wheel was like his ancestors' version of a biorhythmic field generator, or dendrolite. And that is my conclusion. Now the thing is, this is where it gets interesting. Talking about the Crow Nation with the Crow King and what's his name, Tom Yellowtail, who was from the Crow Nation, who told the story of Burnt Face. If you go to my Instagram, but I'll put links in the description box below, I left a message to the Crow Nation on the 15th of March 2022 about this podcast. And when you go, I'll leave a link. When you click on it and you read the message that I put up to the Crow Nation, and it's it's about this podcast. It's about everything that I'm talking about in this podcast. The other thing is, if you go to my Instagram, I'll put links in the description box below, dated 6th of January and the 8th of January, I am teaching a class to two of my students who were involved in all of this. What was done to me, what was done to us people, they did it to us. What they did to me, they did to you too. I teach a class about the Nazca lines, and I talk about how the Nazca lines are actually coded messages that have been left for people like me to decipher, because you'll see that I've left examples up of petroglyphs and all that, where you can see that they're all talking to each other across continents, across generations. They're talking to each other, they're leaving messages to each other across continents through their coded messages, and I'm breaking the coded messages down. And on one of the petroglyphs, I'm actually talking about the dark side, the evil people who are trying to hurt me. And at the time, I said my students as well, because I thought that my students had, were on an ascending path, not realizing the whole thing was a lie. Well, I mean, I knew one of them was faking it. She was a complete setup, but I had to go along with it. I had to play the game in order to gather the evidence. I didn't know it was going to get as bad as what it was, but I actually talk about my life being in danger and the people hiding in the shadows and blah, 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 and these petroglyphs. And then on the 8th of January, I talk about a video that I found called The Chilling Coded Messages of the Ancient Egyptians. And I'm clearly saying in it, you've got it wrong. You're completely misunderstanding what these messages are about. And then I break the messages down, and it is all about this podcast. Because remember Orion's belt, and Orion, the Orion constellation, what do they believe is that it's an ancient clock, and that the star people had the wisdom of time and space and time jumping and time travel. And I've just proved it with the links that I've left in the description box from my Instagram, where I'm leaving messages to the Crow people about this podcast. And I'm proving using the codes of my Egyptian ancestors that everything I've said in this podcast up to this point is true. So, in conclusion, the medicine wheel in Wyoming is a biorhythmic field generator, and it was used to heal burnt face, and it has been used, and it's the sun and the moon, the solstice and the blah blah, okay, yeah, fine, whatever, but it has been built to represent the constellation of Orion and Orion's belt, and Iridanus, which my ancestors use as part of their version of my biorhythmic field generator, but they didn't call it a biorhythmic field generator. It was called the Dendera light. So I will leave links in the description box below. I will leave photos up in my community discussion board thingy, so you can have a look at some of the pictures that I found, or you can go to my Twitter and my LinkedIn, or any of those things, but it's all there. And when you read the messages that I left the Crow people, and because I had a dream that I was being protected by a man with a crow on his head, and I'm talking to one of my students about it, about how he's protective of me. I thought maybe the person who was going to be my next protector was maybe from the Crow Nation, but I think possibly he's Canadian, First Nations Canadian, but I'm not sure. I think, and because the Lakota people had, I forgot to mention with the Crow Nation and the Navajo, and that the Lakota are right in there, and I think possibly he might be Lakota, but I'm not sure. Like Lakota from Canada, my next protector, I mean, but I'm not sure yet. That is yet to be revealed. So, to my Indigenous brothers and sisters out there, you got to wake up, guys, because there's just me doing this, and I'm trying to teach my children, but they're teenagers now. They knew, they know it all, but it's not something that they embrace fully because they're teenagers. They're at their age. I've got to give them their space and let them grow. But, this is why it's so important that I get my podcasts and shows out there, because then I can go around the world. I can decipher these codes. I can tell the people of their lands what these messages are, and then I can use my biorhythmic field generator to heal the planet. I can raise the vibration of Earth, which is what these medicine wheels and that were also trying to do. They were trying to bring peace and prosperity and healing and fertility and bountiful harvests and all that sort of thing with them, but they didn't understand it properly. But I mean, it was what 3200 BC or something. Like, it was a long time ago. They didn't have the access to the things or the knowledge that my ancestors had. But this is why I'm here. This is why I've been put here, because I can read the codes of the universe, and I abide by the laws of the universe, just like the petroglyphs say, and this is why I was almost hunted to extinction. And if anything happens to me, that language is gone. It will be extinct. The being able to understand it all will be extinct. And then if it dies with me, it dies forever, because if you don't know what they're talking about, then who's going to do the work? So this is why I'm here. This is why I've been plugging away and doing everything that I've been asked to do by the gods and ancestors without complaint, even when I'm exhausted, even when, I'm fighting for justice and having to do my investigation to get that justice and clear my name and free my boys and, that sort of thing. I'm just keeping my head down and plodding along and doing as I'm told, because it's so important that Indigenous people stand up, wake up, rise up, and start talking to each other. Again, just like our ancient ancestors did on our markings that we left on those walls, in our temples, in our ritual sites. And please stop letting New Age practitioners and spiritualists and these hippy dippy doodahs take advantage of misappropriate your cultures, because it's unacceptable. They are trying to gain access and knowledge to things they have not earned the right to be a part of. They are stealing from you. They are taking the very essence of your ancestral power to claim as their own, just like the colonies did. And it's unacceptable. So you got to start putting your foot down and saying no to these people coming up to your ritual sites. They've got their own ritual sites. Let them do Stonehenge and Glastonbury and all that, and leave places like Medicine Mountain, the Medicine Wheel and all that alone. They've got to leave our symbols and our practices and our culture alone, because they're bleeding us dry. They're taking from us energetically so that they can feel better about themselves. They are draining our energy, just like they might as well be taking the blood from our very veins, so that we are, dying and turning to dust in the ground. That's the equivalent of what they're doing energetically. But my biorhythmic field generator is going to come along and change all that, because, my ancestors, what they didn't know about energy wasn't worth knowing about. So there you go, an impassioned podcast to the Indigenous people of the world. So we need to start talking to each other. I need to start talking more. And together we can fix this planet, and together we can help civilization, help humanity, and we can reconnect with our ancestors in the skies again, just like we were supposed to. We were never supposed to stop, but somewhere along the line we got distracted with having to fight to survive. But that's okay, because now Orion, the rebirth. And what am I? Scorpio, and I'm the ruler of the rebirth. And it's quite funny actually, because Orion got bitten by a Scorpio. And so they put Scorpius on one side of the sky, and Orion in the middle, and then they gave him the Taurus and or the bighorn, the bighorn, and the rabbit in order to hunt, so that he wouldn't go hungry. But yeah, and I'm the Scorpio, so, and I'm here, and I'm fixing it all now, Orion. Don't worry, I'm making it all better. You must have done something wrong, because Scorpios only bite when they're threatened. They only sting when they're threatened. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to go. I'm going to make myself a nice herbal cup of tea now with some honey in it, because my throat's never recovered from that medication, and I've got a little bit of a cold. So I am going to put the links in the description box below. And if you need me, you know where I am. My email address is going to be there. And I will speak to you soon. Good night, and ka kite anō. Mwah.